Hey Muckleshoot Tribal School, thanks for joining us today on our virtual field trip to spend some time with Willow. So first off, I want to ask you, what kind of cultural ecosystem do you think we're in right here? And we have a little pond here, so this is a small little wetland ecosystem. You might notice some of our plant friends like cattail that like to hang out in the water. Olal, cattail. All right, so we're going to talk about how we identify willow. So willow is notoriously difficult to identify because there are so many species and the different variations will hybridize to create new variations. But the key tips for identifying willow is, number one, you want to be in the right ecosystem. You want to be close to water. Willow loves to grow along the edges of water. Rivers, streams, even a ditch along the edge of the road. Lakes and ponds here at the tribal school. We have a ton of willow back here, and you'll notice that it's all different colors, reds, greens, and yellows and browns. But when you're looking for willow and you're close to water, you're gonna look for the straight shoots. So you notice that these branches appear very, very straight. And they're easiest to spot right now at the end of winter, early spring, because it's a pretty bland landscape of browns, and you'll see the bright yellows and bright reds growing up along the edges of water. And then if you get a closer look, the buds on willow are alternating, so you won't see two side by side on either set. You won't see two on either side of the stem. You'll see one on this side, one on this side going up. So they're back and forth alternating buds. And the other thing about the buds is that they hug the stem really closely. So we could look right here at this guy or gal. We actually have male willows and female willows. And you won't really know until that flower blooms out if this is a male or female willow. But you can see these buds hug the stem really close. They do not jut out or stand up off the stem. So they hug it really tight, which also helps it appear very straight. And then if you're still not really sure, you can wait till they are flowering out. And each flower will have this protective coating over it that's going to fall off once it starts to open. And then they'll look a little bit different, but these flowers will stand up straight up of the stem instead of hanging down. And then the last thing you can do, which is actually a good idea if you're going to gather for medicines, is to taste it. So willow should taste like an aspirin tablet, very bitter. And it might kind of have a wintergreen flavor. And if you get that wintergreen flavor and then a strong bitter aspirin taste, then you know that is good medicine. So when you find a good patch that tastes really, really strong, then you should build a relationship and keep visiting that same place over time, so you can see how it changes and know that you're in a good, clean spot for good, strong medicine. That's another tip too, is where if we were gathering this for medicine, we would want to make sure that we're not too close to a road or agricultural runoff or pollution, and maybe like some cleaner, fresher moving water. All right, so willow is edible, but it's not very palatable, which means it doesn't taste very good. It's very bitter, but that's also because of the medicines that it holds. If you are interested in trying it, or if you're ever out in the woods and hungry and need to use it as a food, you're going to want to go to the newer shoots. So I wouldn't take the bark from this branch. I would go to the new growth and I would peel with a knife this outer bark. And I have a little bit here to show you. But you're going to peel that off. It's going to taste really bitter. But that's because it's really high in vitamin C, magnesium, zinc, and calcium. There we go. The leaves that will come out later in spring, they are 7 to 10 times higher in vitamin C than an orange. We want to talk a little bit about willow's medicine. Willow is a a great medicine that is a fever reducer, it's anti-inflammatory, and a pain reliever. So you can actually use the bark, scraping this outer bark in the spring. You can use the leaves in the spring through summer, and then you could use the bark again in the fall. You can make a tea from the leaves. You can scrape this outer bark and again do a tea with it, or make an oil so you can use it topically. So we often use willow bark in our arthritis medicine for our elders here at Muckleshoot. Willow grows all over the world, and the only places it doesn't grow is Australia and Antarctica. But all over the world, people have used it for thousands and thousands of years as a medicine. The compound inside of willow that is the fever reducer and anti-inflammatory medicine is called salicin. And in the 1800s, some scientists discovered how to recreate salicin, the medicinal compound in willow, without even using a willow. So they're able to synthetically create salicin, and that was marketed as aspirin. So if you didn't want to buy aspirin in the store anymore, you could go right out to your willow trees and get your own medicine. And you know right where it came from, who touched it, how it was processed, and it'll be natural.
So we're down here right by the baseball fields at MTS to show you guys a couple things to do with willow. And willow teaches us flexibility. So one of the projects that we can do is take some long willow branches, and of course I'm going to give you tips for gardening stuff, because getting outside is what we need to do. Out there, grow some plants, get your hands in the dirt. And willow you can easily bend, just super easy, and make yourself an arch to start planting earlier. Put some plastic over it. What it ends up looking like when you're done is this right here, which has, I use nettle cordage. You can use zip ties, string, yarn, anything you find that works for you. And it doesn't have to be this big either. But here's one idea to use. Another, of course, is to just take any of the willow branches and you can make a crown out of it. You can put some flowers in it. Wrong time of the year right now, but put some flowers in it. You could make a dream catcher. You could do any amount of art projects because it's so flexible, and it keeps it, you don't have to use string for that. Lots of projects, guys, right here by MTS. All this willow behind here waiting for you guys to come and discover and play. So willow can also be used in technical processes like making cordage or rope, and how ancestrally it was used is for fishing nets and fishing weirs, because willow is very flexible and is not going to break easily. So they can fish with it, and when done, stick it right back in the mud, and it's going to continue to grow, so they can continue to use it over and over. It was also used in weaving, so making baskets. And if you would like to find some baskets and see them, they're down at the Auburn White River Valley Museum. Big, beautiful baskets. Just another gift that willow gives us to use and play with.
One of willow's superpowers is its rooting hormone. So if you just cut a willow off of a tree, or you find a branch on the ground and you trim it, and then stick it in the mud right here in a wet, muddy spot, push it down enough, what will happen is that rooting hormone is going to trigger it to just start growing roots immediately right out of the end of that little twig or branch that you cut. So we can come back here in a couple weeks and we'll notice that these are getting bigger, the buds are getting bigger and starting to open up, and they're going to grow really quickly. The rooting hormone will also be shared with other plants nearby, so it might trigger and help the other plants to grow stronger roots or to start growing roots from maybe a baby seed. But willow is really important. We use it to restore ecosystems along the water. It helps hold the earth in and hold the edges of the riverbank or the edges of the pond or stream. The roots are literally holding the soil from eroding into the water too quickly. And then it's also providing shade along the edges of the water. And we know that's really important so that we keep the water temperature down so that we can have cool water for our salmon. And then it also provides building material for beavers. And the leaves are an important food for animals like rabbits, moose, deer, and elk, squagwiched. And even when they browse it, the leaves will grow back really quickly. So one of the science experiments you can try at home is to just take a willow branch, cut it, and immediately drop it into a jar full of cold water. And you'll leave it there in a windowsill with some willow twigs in there, freshly cut, for a week or two. And then you have some rooting water. And the hormones that have been released by the willow into the water, you can pour that water into other plants, and those hormones are going to trigger those plants to grow stronger, bigger roots. All right.
Another idea, it's a bigger task, but we have time, right? Another idea is you can take sticks like this, make them in this shape, or even take two, that one wanted to fall away. Take two, crisscross them like this. Now remember, willow has a very strong rooting hormone that's part of its body. And so if you stick this into the ground, it's going to start growing again. And it's going to get some leaves and flowers, and you can build a fort around this and have a living structure. It will take a little time, but as long as you keep it tied the way you want it, you can have yourself a little hideaway. So you want to make a fresh cut right before you're putting it in the ground in order for it to start growing again. Absolutely, give it lots of water. As you can see, it lives in the marshy area with some other plant families out here, but it really likes to have its feet really wet. So don't feel bad about watering it nonstop.